everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I'm here with the estimable Cory Weeds, president and founder of Reel-to-Reel Records, based in Vancouver, British Columbia. And we are here today to talk about the great record store release, which I recommended as much as I did any of them. I think it's just a great hot blast of molten Pepper Adams. Pepper Adams with a Tony Banks trio live at Room at the Top. There, Cory's holding it up. Cory and I, just by total happenstance, both have our records behind us.
I know, it's crazy. Look at that, eh?
Mine are a little off-center, but this building I'm in is tilting. It's 1 million years old. So tell us the story of this Pepper Adams record, how you found it. I think there's a story behind every one of these Record Store Day records. So how did you find this, and why did you put it out now?
Yeah, this is it's an interesting story, Ken. So I came across a TV broadcast, and I believe it was Frank Basili, the great baritone saxophonist who lives in New York City, who's a friend of mine, and said, have you ever seen these? Because they were done in Alberta, which is, for those who might be geography challenged, including myself, Alberta is the province to the east of British Columbia. So Vancouver, British Columbia is on the very west coast. The province next to BC is Alberta. And it was a video recording of a TV show that was Pepper Adams, Julian Priester, Woody Shaw, Clifford Barbaro, Clint Houston, and George McFetridge, who is a Canadian pianist. And the music is incredible. And I forwarded to the end of the credits, and it listed Mark Vasey as one of the producers. And Mark Vasey used to be the I don't know if he was the founder, but he used to run the Alberta Jazz Festivals. And so I knew his name. I had talked to him, but didn't have any contact information. So I did some Facebooking and some research, and somebody reached out to me with his contact information. As it turns out, Mark Vasey had his whole archive and just sitting there, a whole bunch of tapes. And he said, that's the good news. The good news is I have the tapes. The bad news is they've been in my garage, and they have gone through minus. Now, you guys operate on a different system in the States, but in Canada, I can't remember if we're on Celsius or Fahrenheit. I never know. But, they've gone through minus 30 to minus 40 degree winters and, plus 35, plus 36 summers. So I have no idea what kind of condition the tapes were in. So I was like, look, why don't you pick a sampling of the tapes, package them up, I'll pay for them for you to send them to me, and I'll have them transferred, and we'll see how it goes. The long and short of it is that we transferred the 3 or 4 tapes that he sent, and they were perfect.
Wow.
So we struck a deal to get the whole archive sent to me. So there are about 4 or 5 boxes of tapes. And this coincides with the time when the pandemic started in 2000, I guess, when was that? 2019, 2020? I had just purchased a baritone just for fun. I'm a saxophone player, so I purchased a baritone just for fun, just for something to do. Play alto and tenor. I thought, I'd play some bari. And so I got really into Pepper Adams. So in answer to your question, the reason for releasing this is that, the first tapes I got from Mark from this archive were Pepper Adams. There was some stuff from Pepper a little bit later on that sounded good, but I found out later he was quite sick, and by listening to these tapes, you would have never known he was sick. So I sort of gravitated towards the earlier stuff, and this concert from '72 kind of struck me right away, and it struck me for a couple reasons. One, as you said in your intro, I mean, it's burning from the second Pepper puts the saxophone to his lips. But it also features Tommy Banks on piano, and Tommy Banks is he's an unknown guy in terms of the global jazz scene, but in Canada, he was kind of a legend. He became a senator. He kind of retired from music and became a senator here in Canada. He was a wonderful man, very well respected. I think he sounds really good. And so there was a Canadian sort of angle to the whole, release. And so I had a very specific vision for how I wanted it to go. And people associate the label with myself and Zev Feldman, who I know you know very well. And Zev is a dear friend, and I have a great deal of respect for Zev. He didn't work on this one in particular, I think simply because of the sort of the Canadian angle to it. And it's something that I sort of wanted to exploit in my own way. And it was great. We did a great interview with Mark, and just reading the interview on the package inside and find out what was going on in Edmonton was pretty remarkable. I mean, you live in New York, and so to you, it might not be that fascinating, but to somebody who lives in any kind of smaller town, like, man, Mark was really doing some stuff in Edmonton at that time. And it was pretty impressive. And so I just thought, what a great way to, release stuff from this particular archive and have it have a international flavor, but also have it have a real Canadian flavor as well. And I'm really happy with the way it turned out. The interview with Mark, to me, is very fascinating on the inside of the package. I mean, what he was doing in Edmonton was very, very cool, and very innovative is not the right word, but it was very unique. Like, Edmonton, in Toronto or Montreal, it's different because the proximity to New York City is nothing. But Edmonton is way out there, and it's a small town, and he was really doing some incredible stuff. So
this was all recorded. All these other tapes you have, this is all from Room at the Top?
No, there was some Room at the Top, Cabin. I think the place was called Cab's Cabin. There was a couple at the University of Alberta. So they're all kind of different. And they're all different people. Like, we have a great Charles Tolliver recording, a great Sam Rivers recording. I mean, there's some really great stuff. To be really honest with you, Ken, clearing some of it is very difficult, but we're trying. I mean, I know you've talked to Zev at length about the issues and the challenges around clearing some of this stuff. But we're trying really hard on the Charles Tolliver, especially because that's an incredible one. And so, yeah, there was a bunch of different stuff in and around Edmonton that were happening at that time.
And also that recording, I think you said, with Woody Shaw.
Yes, that's there. Having a little trouble with the clearing that stuff with the Woody Shaw estate, but that's a very good recording. It's a Julian Priester, Pepper Adams, and Woody Shaw on the front line.
Who's in the rhythm section?
That would be the same Clifford Barbaro on drums, who's still alive, Clint Houston on bass, and George McFetridge on piano.
What are the variations in these in the challenges you guys face? Because people, as you know, there are a lot of people love to trash Record Store Day, I guess, because they can't get the records. But I know I've seen you in our group, and Zev, unbeknownst to me, people email him and he says, "Yeah, I'll get you a copy." It's not as easy as just, it's Record Store Day. There's so much work that goes into these things, and it's obvious from all the interviews and the graphics and generally the sound quality. What are some of the problems you run into with clearing?
Well, I think so. First of all, and I say this very respectfully. First of all, I don't line up for anything. I'm not a lineup guy. If the Blakey's Jazz Messengers returned with Lee and Hank Mobley, I wouldn't line up. I don't do it. I don't like lining up. And so when people who don't do that or don't have the ability to do that, they get shut out. I understand they're upset. I get it, and I understand it. However, for a tiny company like Reel to Reel, and even a bigger company like Resonance, I mean, I certainly don't want to speak for Zev, but like Resonance, Record Store Day presents an opportunity for a return on investment that's immediate. Like, people don't understand that the Pepper Adams project is a $75,000 project. Maybe not quite that high, maybe a little bit lower, but it's a $60,000 to $65,000 project. And Record Store Day essentially makes it so we recoup our money in one day because they're guaranteed sales.
Yeah.
How, as a company owner, can you ignore that? Do I agree with the concept? I think it's cool, but I don't care about lining up. Like, I don't care that I don't get the Charles Mingus record. It doesn't bother me. Or I don't care that I don't get the Albert Eiler because I'm not willing to line up. But do I think it's cool that people are camping out, at a record store in the middle of downtown Vancouver because they want to get their hands on an Albert Eiler record? Yeah, I think it's pretty cool, and I think it's neat. And Record Store Day is certainly not the first people to invent the limited edition stuff. So I get the complaints, but as solely from a business standpoint, it represents an opportunity to recoup our investment very quickly. And in this day and age, as anybody knows, it's important. And there's not a lot of opportunities in the music industry in general to recoup your investment. So I get it. I don't particularly like the flippers and the flipping of this stuff. But again, it's something that happens in every industry, whether it's sporting events and people buying up tickets and then flipping. Like, I don't have time to really get into that whole thing. I do my best to make the stuff as much as available as I can. And as it turns out, I always hold back some stuff to deal with defects and to deal with different distributors and what have you. And then the other challenge, which is becoming more prevalent now, as I'm sure you've heard, is that there are manufacturing challenges. The demand for vinyl has exploded. Companies can't keep up. The quality control has suffered, and we've had some problems with the Pepper Adams release. We have the regular problems where there's a percentage of the records that just make it through quality control that shouldn't have made it through quality control. But in Pepper Adams in particular, we had a defective inner sleeve, whereby the glue from the poly on the paper sleeve was coming off and marking the records. And yeah, it's unfortunate, and it's a situation that for a small company like mine, quite frankly, that can ruin us. But my attitude is, in this days of social media where you just go on and start complaining and saying these guys are horrible and oh my god, I can't. Like, I try to answer every single Facebook thing and say I will make you whole, whatever it takes. I've got and I've got tone poets before that have looks like they've been thrown down the street and then picked up and put back in the package. This is life, man. It happens. And so I call Blue Note or call Universal and say, hey, look, my record's defective, and they replace it. But this culture of social media where you just go on and say these guys are horrible, they're bad people, and I can't. It happens, and so. So it's about managing that part too. But I'm one guy, and I handle everything from here in my office, as you can see. And I try to respond to every single person, and this stuff is really important to me. So I understand the record store day haters. I do. I understand them. But for us and a small company like us, I think it's a really cool thing. Anything that brings that much attention and excitement is a really cool thing. And I get it. Some people get shut out, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, I mean, out in the middle of nowhere, people get shut out. I mean, I know at the Jazz Record Center, that's the only time that he sold out of everything. It's all gone. I was shocked. He wouldn't even hold the big one that people wanted was the Art Pepper. He wouldn't hold one for me even because I wasn't there that day. But it all blew out. I think this was the most profitable record store day yet.
Could be. Yeah, it was good, and we've definitely and yeah, as you know, so I'm involved in the record label side from I have my other label which is primarily CDs and digital. Cellar Live or Cellar Music, trying to predict the habits of people. I mean, I think the Pepper Adams release is incredible. I had no idea that it would be responded to like this. The Roy Brooks record that we put out, this one,
it was a big deal.
No idea. I mean, I had no idea, and I think that maybe we undershot a little bit, but we didn't undershoot by that much in our thinking. Like, we go through exhaustive conversations around how many we should press. And I mean, we probably could have done 2,500 of Pepper Adams, and we did just under 2. We could have done 4,000 Roy Brooks, and we did. I can't even remember how many we did.
What have been the other record store day releases from Reel to Reel?
We did Cannonball. We did Etta Jones, Harold, Eddie Lockjaw Davis, Harold Land, Roy Brooks, Pepper Adams, and then we did this was more of a UK and a Canada record store day, but we did a reissue of a Neil Swainson record with Joe Henderson and Woody Shaw. That one didn't get into the big record store day, but it was kind of an important. It's a phenomenal And we did George Coleman too.
Wow.
We did the George Coleman record, so it's
Oh,
fun. I mean, I love it, and we got lots of stuff coming down. That Zev and I are working on a bunch of stuff. It's really fun. It's very cool. There's some good stuff coming down.
that's great. And back to the challenges. What are the challenges in dealing with getting the rights to these things? You must deal with everything from families to attorneys to what are the different challenges you've run into?
Yeah, I mean, we've been fairly lucky, but yes, I mean, the first challenge is finding the people. That's the toughest challenge.
Wow.
And Zev has been, instrumental in helping us find the appropriate people. And in some cases, we cannot find the appropriate people. And in that case, we make a decision as a company to proceed or not proceed. And we hold money in trust for those estates in case they come calling. For the most part, we've managed to find, I would say, probably 90% of the key players in all of this, but that's very time consuming. It's very time consuming. A lot of times, sometimes you can you're dealing with like a hipper estate whereby they've done this before, so they have attorney representation, and so they know the drill. In some cases, you have people that haven't ever dealt with this before and immediately are untrusting. So you have to navigate that. And then you meet some people in some estates that are like, oh, great, you want to put out something by my mom or my dad? Yeah, great, no problem. That money sounds fine. Yeah, it's great. No problem. So yeah, so usually it's we work really hard to try to find the leaders right away, and then deal with the side people. And again, we have to make a calculated decision and an executive decision on, okay, we haven't got a hold of everybody. Should we proceed? And we do. And so far we haven't run into any problems.
That's great. So can you say what the situation was with Pepper Adams' family?
We didn't get in touch with them. We tried. We made all kinds of efforts to reach them, and so we have money set aside in case that estate ever comes calling. I don't believe. So here's the other thing: it can't just be somebody saying, "Oh, I'm so and so's son." It has to be an organized estate, like an official legal estate. We can't pay money out to something that's not official because, if we do that and then somewhere down the road, a long lost brother or sister comes, it's like, oh, wait a minute. So, right. So yeah, you make best efforts and, you move ahead accordingly and hope, that if somebody does come calling that they're reasonable and, we're not dealing with a lot of money here. Now, I think, and again, I don't want to speak for Zev, but, Zev is dealing in the world of Charles Mingus and Bill Evans and, some of the very high visibility artists. So it's a little bit different for him. Whereas us, we're dealing with less visible artists, at least so far. We're dealing with less visible artists, so there's sort of less issue. But, we always prepare that, one day we might get a call from Claudette Adams, who is the widow of Pepper, and and then we'll deal with it at that time. But we're not talking about, I'm not driving around a Jaguar or a Mercedes-Benz based on the sales of these records. This is about legacy, and I think one thing that helps us is that when you see the packaging, you know what we're doing. We're not putting this stuff out to try to make a quick buck. And
Pepper Adams is not as famous as those guys, but he's one of the greatest baritone sax players of all time, which announces itself as soon as you play this record. And that's sort of sad, isn't it? You couldn't find his family or whoever. That sort of speaks to the legacy of jazz in this country, which, this country goes out of its way to piss all over jazz on a nonstop basis. That's another story, but it's kind of sad. Back to the record and what you're saying about Tommy Banks. That guy was fantastic. I was just listening, playing it in the store that day, and I was like, wow, this guy's really, really phenomenal. And plus, we did that. Zev spoke about it a little bit, but this guy was playing these beautiful, perfect solos, like Milt Jackson solos. To me, he played perfect solos. And this guy was playing one after the other.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you know he's
it was
got.
really neat to hear, because sad, you talk about Pepper and like it was sad that Pepper Adams wasn't afforded the opportunity to tour with his own band. And that happens today. Like it's just, there's a certain, for whatever reason, certain musicians rise to the top, and then others who are just as good, maybe even better than those, are not afforded those same opportunities. And Pepper was just one that kind of traveled around the world playing with pickup rhythm sections. And the thing I like about this, and I think Frank talks about it at length in the interview in the package, is that Pepper just did his thing, and was like, okay, are you going to come with me or are you not? Like Pepper didn't play any differently if it was Tommy Banks's trio or Tommy Flanagan's trio. I mean, he just did his thing. And I love that about this particular record. Like Pepper's just going for it. And the guys, they hang out. It's funny too, because it's electric bass, which is like normally that would be like, oh man, electric bass, really? But I don't know. It just, there was something about this, and you could tell the crowd is just loving it. And Pepper is just ripping, and what's not to like, and the sound is good, and it's another thing about this, I see this fodder on Facebook about like the sound of these, like it's an archival recording. So you need to understand that just that word already indicates a certain thing. So I don't like it when people complain about, oh, this or that record sounds horrible. I understand what you're saying, but it's an archival recording. So it's almost less about the sound and it's more about the fact that this music really needs to be heard. And I think, the problem is a lot of times is that you have these audiophile people who know more about the sound of the music rather than the actual music. And I say that jokingly, but also very respectfully, And so we got lucky with this one. It sounds good.
Sounds great.
And it was for a radio broadcast, so it was treated a little bit differently. And I understand those people. I mean, sometimes I listen, like I have trouble, like, for example, like the Bird box that came out for the last record store day. Like, yeah, the sound is not good, but geez, it's Bird in 54. Like, what do you expect? And it's Bird. Like, I'm listening to it going, this is amazing. See people like, I like the Bird set, but the sound was awful. I'm like, of course it was awful. Like, it was recorded on a cassette player.
I think a lot of people, they grew up, I mean, you're a good bit younger than me, but a lot of people grew up in the CD era. They don't realize this is vinyl and tape, a little tape recorder in a small club. I mean, what? I mean, this thing sounds phenomenal.
Totally.
Yeah, sounds great. I mean, the Pepper Adams sounds as good as anything else on this, and they all sounded great. The only, out of all the record store day things, the only one I ever had problems with was the Bill Evans of Ronnie Scott's. And I know when I said that to Zeb, he cringed, but whatever. What was done to what do y'all do in remastering? You obviously certainly did something to the tape.
So I mean, for people that aren't like super knowledgeable around the process, so to kind of break it down in layman's terms, when you go into a recording studio and you're all in a separate room, you all have your own separate sound. So if a saxophone player screws up, you can go and fix that because there are no other instruments that are coming into your microphone. It's only you. So when you're live, you have I don't know how many microphones were on stage here, but you have drum mics and bass mics and baritone sax mics and piano mics. All the sound is going into all the mics. And we call that sort of like you're doing essentially a 2-track recording, meaning that you're just pressing play and record, and what you hear is what you get. Now, within that, there are some things that you can do to enhance the overall sound, whether it's EQing and adjusting frequencies on the high end and adjusting frequencies on the low end, to kind of tighten it up a little bit. But you can't really make the baritone louder because you're going to make everything else louder. You can't really make the drums softer because you're going to make everything else softer. So you do have some flexibility, and the way technology is these days, there are a lot more options. But essentially what you're hearing and you have the wild. So a lot of what happens in these releases is the mastering. So you need to take the music and make it into a format so you're not going to be jumping up, turning it up and turning it down and turning it up and turning it down. Like, oh, the baritone's loud. You know, you have to make it so it's even. Obviously, there's going to be fluctuation and dynamics, but it's going to be even so you don't jump up and change the volume. That's essentially what happens with these releases. And we transfer them at a high bit rate, which is a whole other conversation for another time, but we transfer them at a high bit rate and we make the sound adjustment there. But it's not, you know, we're not spending 15 hours, you know, making the saxophone sound just right, because if you put more high end on the saxophone, you're putting more high end on everything. And so that's going to accentuate the ride cymbal because that's already a high frequency. So, you know, it's a bit of a fine line. So generally what you see or what you hear is what you get. There's only EQing and making things a little more present that you can do. Like for example, I have this recording, something in Italy with Bob Mover and Walter Davis Jr. And it was taped. It was recorded on a cassette player, and so I actually got the cassette and did the transfer. And I'm going to send it to my guy. And there's only so much he can do. It's essentially he can EQ it to make it sound a little more even, but he can't make the saxophone louder. It's not possible, because it's not a three-dimensional situation. It's one-dimensional. So if you change one thing, you change everything. Whereas if you're in the studio and you want more saxophone, because I'm in a room, then it becomes three-dimensional because you can adjust everything.
Sure.
Right? So, you know, yeah.
So it speaks to this guy, said his name was Mike, who did all these recordings?
Mark Vasey, who did the recordings. Yeah. So because it was for a radio show, he was really working hard at making it sound good for rebroadcast. And the same with Harold Land. That was Eddie Lockjaw Davis and Johnny Griffin, Cannonball. Those were radio broadcasts. Whereas something like Roy Brooks and George Coleman, that was some guy, Vernon Welsh, hitting play and record and walking away.
Right.
Not monitoring for, I'm not saying, I mean, some of those tapes sound incredible, but some of them are unusable. And that's because it wasn't being done for anything other than nostalgia and documentation. Whereas the Jim Wilkie tapes or the Mark Vasey tapes were being done for radio.
So that answered my other question. Can people still get copies of this? I guess not.
I have a few sitting here. You know, people can message me. But yeah, we're running low. The manufacturing issue with that poly bag has been very frustrating, but we've managed to deal with it, and we're getting way more positive feedback than negative. But we do have a few, so you can send a few people my way. Key for me as a small company is I'll answer every single one of those calls. So I troll the vinyl groups, especially your group, and just, hey guys, like, I'm here. If you have any problems, just direct them at me personally, private message me, and I will make sure you're taken care of. But it's not doing anybody any good to go online and say these people are awful. Like, no, we're trying to just survive out there. And as I said, I used the Blue Note thing. I got a tone poet that was literally looked like it'd been run over by a car. It happened. Yeah. I called them, said, you need to replace this. They replaced it. It was fine. You know, it happens. Shit happens. I'm not a hippie kind of, like, but we just need to all relax for a minute and just, it's been a crazy couple of years and there's some shit happening. So I mean, everybody needs to just relax and just know that, like, everything will be taken care of if you just handle it in a nice way. Like, we need to be kind, man. We really need to be kind.
Well said. And these, how are CD sales on all these records?
You know, in general, that's the other thing with the physical media has actually increased as well in terms of like the popularity of vinyl. And we had the shortage of vinyl for a minute. It seems to be coming back to normal levels now, but the CD stuff has increased. So Roy Brooks' CD did really well. Harold Land did really well. George Coleman did well, and the Pepper Adams is doing well too. So, you know, by all accounts, they're doing well. But yeah, CDs are, you know, it's kind of in and out with that. And digital has done well. I mean, as a company, we've really focused on trying to trying to join the streaming game and trying to crack that code, and we've actually done a pretty good job of it. So I don't agree with the economics behind these streaming companies, and all that's a nice way of saying what I really want to say, but it's here, and you have to either join them or you're just going to be bitter and angry for the rest of your life.
What's upcoming from Real to Real that you can tell us about, or even Cellar Live or Cellar Music? What's upcoming?
Well, the Cellar music label is extremely active. We're releasing tons of stuff from New York musicians. So we've got a great record from Billy Drummond coming up. We've got a great album from Grant Stewart that's just coming out. A Canadian tenor player, lives in New York. So that side of the label is very busy. Real to Real, I mentioned we're working on a Charles Tolliver release, and that's gone a little slower than I like. We're working on a Jack McDuff release. Zev and I are working on a couple other things with Shelly, Manne and Shirley Scott, and so we've got some stuff in the pipeline that we're just working through. So it's an ongoing situation, as it were.
Can you give any more details on the Shelly, Manne and Shirley Scott?
No, I can't. I'm not allowed because Zev will get mad at me. But they're one of them is from the left bank, and Shelly, Manne is a combination of the Monterey Jazz Festival, early Monterey Jazz Festival, and the Penthouse. The Jack McDuff is an early '70s recording from a club in Seattle called the Gallery. Charles Tolliver is from the Edmonton tapes. So it's just kind of a matter of getting all this stuff cleared and trying to figure it all out, and it takes a long time. And I mean, we've been working on the Shirley Scott for over a year, and I thought it was dead, and it kind of reappeared, So
does she have? Are you able to get in touch with her people? Does she have?
Yep, I am, because she has a couple of daughters with Stanley Turrentine. So that was because they were married. So that was the connection there.
Did you ever wonder? I always thought Shirley sounded better with Eddie Lockjaw Davis than with Stanley, even though she was married to Stanley. What's that all about?
Yeah, that's it. That's interesting. You know what I found out about her the other day, and I haven't confirmed this, but apparently, it was the record company's idea for Shirley to play with bass. It wasn't her idea. I just assumed, although I do have one record, I think it's called Dearly Beloved, which is a rare Stanley T record where she's playing just bass, like no bass player, and she sounds great. So a friend of mine was telling me that, no, that was a record company. They were like, they wanted to differentiate her from, like Jimmy Smith and all the other guys that were playing, left-hand bass.
But she could play pedal.
She could. Yeah, she really could.
Wow.
So, but yeah, Stanley's my man. Now that you said that, I'm going to go back and listen. But yeah, she had a thing with Lockjaw. There was definitely a vibe there with those two for sure, but I like her. I actually like her trio stuff. It's so funny when people come over and look at my records, like my Shirley section is here, and it's like, it's like 5 inches long, and you go to my Coltrane section, it's like, it's half the size, and people are like, man, that's weird, man.
You have the weird, you have the Strata East record done by Shirley.
Yeah, the one that just came out, right? Like, or if you, do you know a good thing?
I don't know. I have the original record.
You have the original. I think they reissued. It's called "Do You Know a Good?" Harold Vick,
right.
With Harold Vick and Billy Higgins, right?
Right.
Yeah. They reissued that. Yeah.
I just for some reason she seems to have more space with
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe Stanley just took more room. Cool. Well, thanks so much, Cory.
Man, anytime. Great to talk to you. Thanks for all the support. And yeah, like you said, I got my jazz. I didn't even do this on purpose, man.
Yeah, right. Thanks a lot, man. Have a good night.
Okay, buddy.
Stay cool up there.
Keep in touch.
Yeah, Cory.
Yeah, man.